simply great. Thank you so much. I'll have it framed and hang it right by Jimmy's picture.
Let's just wait. Let's go back to the floor for just a moment and catch up with what's going on. The vote has now reached what state, gentlemen?
Michigan.
Michigan.
Madam, may I have your attention, please? Before we...
Would you please move away from here?
At this point in the proceedings and before we take the Michigan vote, I want to do two things. First, I want to acknowledge in the Michigan delegation one of America's most distinguished United States senators is retiring this year, a very dear friend of every Democratic senator and every senator, Senator Phil Hart. Phil, stand and say hello to Phil Hart.
Senator Hart has been ill late, and he is retiring from the Senate this year after years of distinguished service.
And now, please may I have order, because there's another announcement I want to make that really is important, because I know this convention wants to be fair. You have been fair. You've been wonderful. You were fairly elected, and you've conducted yourself fairly, and I want to clear up a matter that has been troubling me since last evening. Last evening, when the Alabama delegation was recognized, I think the thrust of the remarks of Senator Wilson of Alabama were seriously misinterpreted. I had known, and the chair then had known, that he was going to speak for a couple of minutes. And what the thrust of Senator Wilson's remarks were intended to be, and what he was trying to say, till we all thought there was something to the contrary taking place, he was really trying to say that Governor Wallace had released his delegates to Governor Carter and called on all of them to support Governor Carter and support this Democratic ticket, and that he also, not only with respect to his delegates, but with respect to his constituents here across this country, which is very substantial, that he encouraged all of them to support our Democratic ticket this fall. And I'd like to get that on the record. And I'd like to give him the hand on it. And I'd like to say that's why we're going to be in the White House in November.
The misinterpretation was rather a severe one last night, as a matter of fact. So much so that State Senator Robert Wilson, who was booed as he spoke in praise of Governor Wallace, before he ever got around to the point of saying that Wallace, as Bob Strauss just said, wanted his delegates to vote for Carter. Well, he was booed rather roundly at that point, and today Wilson said he would not return to the convention floor until he got an apology from Bob Strauss, the Democratic National Chairman. A couple of the members of the Alabama delegation flew on home today, and a lot of others skipped the session this afternoon, although I noticed that most of the Alabama seats seem to be filled tonight. The word must have spread that the apology was forthcoming.
One for Governor Anderson and one for Governor Thompson.
Senator Mondale has arrived at the Garden. He's waiting backstage to make his entry tonight. Right after this vote is completed, he will make his acceptance speech, and then it'll be followed by the major moment of any political convention, the speech of the presidential nominee.
Proudly cast all 65 of its votes for its own senator, Senator Walter Mondale.
65 votes for Senator Mondale. Mississippi.
Madam Chairman, the state of Mississippi, the United Democratic Party of our nation, unanimously, proudly cast its 24 votes for Walter Mondale.
The Mississippi vote, 24 votes for Senator Mondale. Missouri.
Madam Chairman, Senator Eagleton of Missouri.
Good.
As an expert on the vice presidency, Missouri is proud to cast 71 votes for Walter Mondale.
That, of course, is Senator Tom Eagleton of Missouri, who, as you know, was Senator McGovern's first choice as his vice presidential nominee. And then after it was revealed he'd been under psychiatric care one time, he abandoned the race and Sergeant Shriver was picked in his stead.
16 votes for Senator Mondale and 1 vote for Barbara Jordan. Nebraska.
Nebraska cast 7 votes for Senator Frank Church, 15 votes for Senator Mondale, 1 vote for Josephine E. R. A. Smith.
That's an interesting one. The Nebraska vote, Senator Mondale, 15, 7 for Senator Church, and 1 for Joseph E. R. A. Smith.
That puts Senator Mondale over, as if anybody had any doubt about it. He is now definitely the nominee. Josephine E. R. A. Smith in Nebraska. That story may go back quite a few years. If you remember, you may not remember, but back in the 1956 Republican Convention in San Francisco, there was absolutely no excitement to that convention, not even for the vice presidential nomination. That was the renomination of Eisenhower and Nixon. And to brighten up proceedings, a gentleman from Nebraska got up and nominated Joe Smith for the vice presidency. Poor Speaker Martin, who was the chairman of the convention, almost gavelled himself into apoplexy trying to find out who Joe Smith was before they finally moved on to the nomination of Vice President Nixon. This is the celebration following the announcement that Senator Mondale had gone over the top. Democratic National Convention coverage by CBS News will resume after this message.
These are the cars that Ford built. They all come with a starter drive that Ford built. Instead of 4 cams, a Ford Motor Company starter drive has 5 cams, so it should last 50% longer. Now, these are the starter drives that start the cars that Ford built. This is a solid-state ignition that comes on the cars that Ford built. Solid state means no more points, no more condensers. You get a stronger spark for better starting. Your plugs last longer with solid-state ignition that comes on the cars that Ford built. This is a choke that comes on the engines that Ford built. The choke comes with a tiny heater. Heat from the tiny heater turns the choke off faster after the engines start up. Faster the choke turns off, the less pollution there is. These are only some of the things that come on the cars that Ford built. Ford built. That's a lot of things that are good built. It's simple. Ford wants to be your car company.
Take a look at people who take Geritol.
I watch my health just as carefully since we have our baby as I did before.
Now I've got even more reason for taking care of my health.
I'm a working mother, and I think a good mother. And taking care of my health sure helps. That's why I get my rest and exercise and take Geritol every day.
Geritol. To be sure you get enough iron and some very important vitamins. Take a look at who takes Geritol.
Geritol every day.
Shouldn't you?
Why is Sominex the best-selling sleeping aid in America? Here are some reasons.
Because it gives you the help you're looking for, and if a product is good, people buy it.
When you have trouble falling asleep, it really works. Because Sominex helps you relax and feel sleepy.
Sominex. When you sometimes have trouble falling asleep, let Sominex work for you.
Sominex has been a big help to me.
There's a demand for a recount. New York is trying.
Here at Madison Square Garden, Senator Walter Frederick Mondale of Minnesota has been nominated to be the vice presidential running mate to Governor James Earl Carter of Georgia. The voting continues. It's just that Mondale has gone over the magic number of 1,505, the majority of the delegates at this convention. And I'm here in our CBS News anchor booth with the presidential candidate's mother, Miss Lillian Carter. And we've got a little film here that I think that you might like to watch with me, Miss Carter. Because if you really want to know any town, perhaps the best way is through the eyes of a hometown boy. For the town of Plains, Georgia, our guide was a hometown boy who made good, and then better, and now hopes for the best.
3 for whom?
Whatever his name is.
Plains is a town that consists of a 1/2 mile circle around the depot, railroad depot. This is a total town ahead of us. We have 2 grocery stores and 2 filling stations and a drugstore and a post office and 1 hardware store. That's the total business establishment. This school ahead of us was formerly the all-black school, and now it's completely integrated. My daughter, Amy, is 8 years old, and she goes to school here. Last year she was in the 2nd grade, and she had 13 white classmates, 16 black classmates, black teacher, white principal. And this is typical. The kids get along well together, and you can see it's well maintained. We never have a problem with a broken window or trash on the grounds. People are very proud of it, and also very proud of the fact that our black and white children go together in harmony. This is a Baptist church here, where I've been a member all my life.
Did you have some trouble at the church at one time?
Well, yes. During the times when we were having our civil rights debates in the South, the deacons voted unanimously not to let blacks come into the church. And the church conference makes the final decision. We meet once a month in church conference in the Baptist church. So I was at a wedding of one of my first cousins up in North Georgia. And so my wife and I drove back all Sunday morning to get here for the conference. There were about 250 people there, although ordinarily only about 35 or 40 people attend the conference. And I got up and made a speech saying that I thought it was wrong to exclude anyone from church, urging that the church be kept in an integrated status, which it always had been, in that we always welcomed blacks to come and participate in church affairs. But the vote was about 55 to 6. The votes for the receiving of black worshipers was my wife and I and my mother and my children. But I think that we really represented possibly even a majority, because after the vote was over, about 1/3 of those who didn't vote came and said they knew I was right. I grew up about a 1/2 mile ahead of us in a community called Archery. This yellow house up ahead, which has now been remodeled several times, is a house that I lived in all the time I was a child. I helped my father plant these pecan trees on the right. I hate to admit it, it's obviously so long ago, but they were probably planted in 1935 to 1940. I don't remember the year.
What sort of relationship did you have with other black children your age, and what happened as you grew older?
Well, all my classmates, all my playmates were black. All my classmates were white. When I went to school, it was a white environment. When I was on the farm, or whenever I went to the creek to fish or to go swimming, or whenever we worked in the field, it was always just me and my black playmates. We used to go down the railroad track there about another 1/4 mile, and if we wanted to ride to Plains or to Americus on the railroad, it had a little diesel engine called a butt head. We would walk up the track 200 or 300 yards and get a little leather flag and stick it in a hole in the crosstie, and the engineer would stop and we'd get on a train to go to Plains or to Americus. And that was the first time I ever experienced segregation, because if I and one of my playmates got on the train, he had to sit in one part of the train and I had to sit in a different one. But then when we got off the train, we got back together. So this was a kind of a subtle thing, but it was understood so clearly that nobody ever questioned it. It was just part of our lives. But I can vaguely remember that when we got 14, 15 years old, that my black playmates, who had been completely equal up until then, began to defer to me. If we went up to a gate in the field, my black playmate, who formerly would wait for me to open the gate, perhaps, then would do that chore. Those times are gone, and it's good for us. The best thing that ever happened to the South in my lifetime, as I've said often during the campaign, is the passage of a Civil Rights Act and granting to black people the same chance to buy a home or hold a job or go to school or participate in public affairs along with whites. It not only liberated black people, but it liberated the white people, too, of the South.
Lillian, when we were watching that picture, you said as a picture of Amy, 8-year-old daughter, came up, you said, "That's my darling."
Yeah,
and obviously she's a great favorite of her father's and her mother's, as any youngest child usually is, particularly when there's been a little gap between the children there. I wonder, are you concerned Amy's going to spend the most formative years of her life, particularly if Jimmy Carter spends 8 years in the White House, so she's going to be 16 when he finishes his term. Are you concerned about what that might do to Amy?
She's such a self-sufficient little girl. And she's always been in politics, and having lived in the mansion so long, she's accustomed to not living in planes. I'm concerned greatly about Amy because I've had her for 18 months, and boy, sometimes I don't even want Jimmy to win because he's going to take Amy away from me. No, I think she'll be able to cope with it.
You think you might move to the White House?
No, sir.
Why?
Well, good Lord, I wouldn't live in Washington for anything. I don't like a city. I get homesick 2 days after I leave Plains. It's just my home. And I wondered, I said, every once in a while, when I get old, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to relax. But I haven't gotten old enough yet. I'm just 77. And every time I think I'm going to get in a rocking chair, something good happens to me and just keeps me buoyed up. This last thing that happened is keeping Amy. Jimmy asked me, she says, "Mother, I want you to help me because I helped him so much in the governor's race." I said, "Jimmy, who's going to keep Amy?" And he looked at me, he says, "Would you?" And I said, "I would." And so I have complete charge of Amy nearly every week, nearly 5 or 6 days of the week when they're out of town. And I look forward to them coming home and let Amy see them, but I look forward to them leaving again so I can have Amy.
What used to make Jimmy Carter as a boy angry, besides having his sister throw a monkey wrench at him, was a certain justification to it, seems?
Let's see. Well, he had a boy, little colored boy named A.D. Davis, and sometimes A.D. would say, "Miss Lillian, make Jimmy quit acting so uppity." And I'd say, and that would make Jimmy madder than anything in the world. He said, "I'm not acting uppity." "Yes, you do," said, "you act so uppity, I can't stand you." So the little scraps with his friend, I think that's the only time he got mad when he was little, is with this little colored boy who was his friend. Now, A.D. is grown. He has 10 children. He says his life is quite different from Jimmy's, but I think every time Jimmy goes home, he goes to see A.D.
What makes him mad today?
I don't see him in this mad things during the times he's mad. I think he gets angry when things don't go to suit him in the nation. He gets angry with things like that. But I hardly ever see Jimmy angry. I know he does, but not around me.
Let me see what's going on down there on the floor at the moment. There seems to be a lot of cheering.
What is that?
It seems that there was a mention of New York City, and they're cheering New York City. I don't mean to sound skeptical, but that's what was handed me. Looks to me like Texas is the center of the celebration, however. The Texans are holding up some signs, and they're cheering They're cheering, "We love New York." Abe Beam, the mayor of New York, has come to the platform and is helping to lead the cheering, but I don't think he started it. I think it started probably in the Texas delegation. You know, there's been a sort of a, kind of a running, almost a jovial feud. There's the signs Texas holding up. Kind of a friendly feud between the two areas, Texas and New York, possibly because Texas has been gaining so much financial power over the years, a little jealousy. That might have something to do with it. Miss Lillian, one more question very quickly. Any way for us to tell that Governor Carter, presidential nominee Carter, is angry about anything? Any signs?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. He has a vein. I think it's in his right temple, though it may be in his left. And this vein, you can see it pulsing when he's getting angry or when anything bothers him, especially getting angry. I remember the day in church when they had that little trouble. I looked at Jimmy and that vein was just, it was just up and down. So I've noticed that ever since he's been a man.
We'll keep our eyes peeled for the pulsing vein.
Please do.
Miss Lillian, thank you very much for being with us up here.
Thank you for
I'll help you out. I'll help you out.
Oh, yeah, let's do take it off.
Wrong union. I'll be in trouble for that. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
For Senator Mondale.
You right there?
Votes for Senator Mondale. Virginia.
CBS News coverage of the Democratic National Convention will continue in a moment.
54 votes.
This is CBS.
I'm Bob Brownlee, manager National Permits 15th and M Street office.
Martha Houck, manager of our MacArthur Boulevard office.
Charles Ferguson at Brookland.
I'm Catherine Alligood. I'm the manager of Chevy Chase branch.
Ned Lewis, the Pennsylvania Avenue branch.
Welcome to our Friendship Heights branch. I'm Dave Mayer.
Teresa Mangello, the manager of the Langley Park office.
Joe Burke of Georgetown.
Margaret Hearn, vice president and branch manager of the Connecticut and K Street office.
1400 G Street. I'm John Ryan, the manager.
National Permanent all over town.
Let's give a great big cheer to the dealer of the year.
1, 2, 3 days
to try and car you wanna buy with a money back guarantee. If you're not happy as can be, yes sirree, at Sheets today. Yes sirree, at Sheets. Hooray! Yes, Sheets for beep beep.
Gordon Peterson has the last word on the convention after tonight's.
CBS News continues its coverage of Campaign 76. Tonight, the final session of the Democratic National Convention from Madison Square Garden in New York. This portion sponsored by Geritol, the iron and vitamin tonic for your health. Geritol every day. And now, here again is Walter Cronkite.
The balloting for the vice presidential nomination is just coming to an end. Let's go back to the podium at this Democratic National Convention.
One vote to Barbara Jordan.
Which one did she miss? Read again. Read him again.
1 vote for Fritz Efa. 1 vote for Barbara Jordan.
Yeah.
1 vote for Al Castro. 6 votes for George Wallace. 1 abstention and 58 votes for Senator Mondale.
Okay. It's 1 vote for Fritz Efo, 58 for Senator Mondale, 1 for Barbara Jordan, 6 for Governor Wallace, 1 for Al Astro, and 1 abstention. Wyoming.
Secretary, wonderful Wyoming, the Equality State cast 10 votes for Senator Mondale.
The Wyoming vote, 10 votes for Senator Mondale. And now for the Democrats abroad.
Madam Secretary, Democrats abroad unanimously and enthusiastically cast 3 votes for Senator Mondale and wishes they were a lot more.
Thank you so much, Tony. The Democrats abroad cast 3 votes for Senator Mondale. That completes the roll call.
Recognize Minnesota.
And at this point, I would like to recognize Minnesota.
Madam Secretary, Minnesota rises to move that Senator Walter Mondale, our own very favorite son candidate, and the choice of our great presidential candidate, Jimmy Carter, be nominated by this body by acclamation.
There is a motion to suspend the rules and nominate Walter Mondale by acclamation. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? By acclamation, Walter Mondale is our vice presidential candidate.
Convention managers are letting this demonstration run because now there is no more business before the convention other than hearing from Vice Presidential nominee Walter Mondale and the presidential nominee Jimmy Carter. And they're a little bit ahead of schedule. They had planned on bringing Senator Mondale, the vice presidential nominee, on at 9:30. That's another half hour from now. So there's really going to be a little vamping until ready. Besides letting the demonstration run, they'll be presenting some distinguished persons with plaques, some of those who have made particular contributions to the Democratic Party in years past. The Democratic National Convention coverage by CBS News will resume after this message.
A woman can walk miles in a day just by doing ordinary things. And an ordinary day can make a woman's legs feel tired. But new no-nonsense Comfort Stride pantyhose can help make your legs feel refreshed. It's made with a special yarn that's stimulating and soothing, but it looks sheer and beautiful, too. There's also a ventilated panel, so it feels cool and fits well. New no-nonsense Comfort Stride pantyhose in the silver pouch, so your legs can feel as good as they look.
This is Captain Jack Brink. His tummy has acid indigestion.
Heartburn. Gas.
Unpleasant.
Aggravating.
So we'll give him Tums. Tums are strong medicine for neutralizing excess acid. Taken as directed, Tums starts working in seconds. If Tums work for Captain Brink, imagine what they'll do for you.
Tums worked.
He feels better. I feel better. Tums for the tummy. And that's a tummy.
Can a Ford Granada match the smoothness of a $12,000 car? A series of test comparisons were made at various speeds and surface conditions between a Cadillac Seville, a Mercedes-Benz 280, and a Ford Granada. Here, over irregularly spaced boards, a vibration recorder took readings. In all tests, the Ford Granada consistently ranked first or second. Granada's base sticker price, under $4,000, excluding taxes, title, and destination charges. See your local Ford dealer.
You know, all microwave ovens cook fast, but my new Hotpoint cooks to order. It has automatic temperature control. I simply put this sensor in and order the doneness I want by setting the serving temperature control. When the food's ready, the oven shuts off automatically.
You can order beef rare, medium, or well done.
Snacks are warmed up, not dried out. Hotpoint's automatic temperature control. It lets you cook to order.
And all Hotpoint appliances are backed by Customer Care Everywhere service.
Presidential nominee Jimmy Carter leaving the Americana Hotel to come to this convention hall, Madison Square Garden. It's about 20 blocks south of the Americana Hotel. And he'll have all the trappings tonight of a nominee. The Secret Service guard is there. Of course, he's had that all along as a candidate for the nomination under the new security rules. He'll also have police escort. Shouldn't have much trouble with New York traffic getting to the hall. He'll be here very shortly. I don't see James Earl Carter, Secret Service agents riding on the back of the car, and quite a large entourage, accompanied by police cars, fore and aft in that convoy, is on the way down 7th Avenue to Madison Square Garden. His running mate, Senator Walter Mondale, Minnesota, nominated, as you saw just a moment ago. I've got some absolutely rotten news for Roger Mudd. If he didn't hear what happened tonight, he has been displaced in the ranks of vice presidential, those who have won vice presidential votes at the convention. Last year, or 1972, Roger Mudd got a vote for vice presidency. This year, he didn't get any. But our colleague Dan Shore did. Dan Shore got one vote cast by a young delegate from Oregon. The press and the media generally, of course, get a lot of attention at a convention like this because there are more of us, I suppose, than there are anybody else, including delegates. In fact, the Pennsylvania delegation passed a tongue-in-cheek resolution today, whereasing all over the place, and among their whereases were that the press dominates the electoral process, outnumbers the delegates more than 2 to 1, and attracts delegates more interested in media exposure than the proceedings. The resolution passed in the wee hours during a celebration of Carter's victory, therefore, that only the press shall be delegates to future conventions, and that the networks and wire services shall hold the primaries, adding that local media to fill out their delegations. All of this should take effect on a rather significant date, April 1st, 1977. Charles Kuralt wasn't sure, though, that was all in jest.
In that crowd back there are one politician, about 20 policemen, and about 500 reporters and photographers. This is a big story. Jimmy Carter is crossing the street. At this moment, the network flash units are reporting to their newsrooms. Jimmy Carter is crossing the street. 100 reporters are scribbling on their pads. Jimmy Carter is crossing the street. And all these cameramen down here are tripping over one another because Jimmy Carter is crossing the street. This is all ridiculous, of course, but there is only one Jimmy Carter at this convention, and there are 10,000 members of the press. And under those conditions, nothing becomes a story. What do you think all these photographers are taking pictures of? Well, frequently of nothing much. And sometimes, of absolutely nothing at all. By our yellow tags, ye shall know us. We are branded, all 10,000 of us, as we move restlessly through the streets and the hotel ballrooms, asking the tough questions, taking the great pictures. Some of us, of course, are smarter than others. This guy, I thought, was probably the smartest of all. Fast asleep on a ballroom floor.
Say it again. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Journalism is increasingly an electronic medium, of course. This convention wouldn't work without all the monitors and all the telephones and all the hundreds of miles of microphone cable that are deployed efficiently and smoothly by cool professional technicians to bring you the story. This is a convention of advanced electronic techniques. Since there are 3 journalists here for every delegate, naturally when it comes time to do interviews, there are not enough delegates to go around. The New York Times interviews the Kansas City Star, therefore, and CBS News interviews Mrs. Johnny Johnson of the Athens, Texas Pea Picker. What kind of paper is the Pea Picker?
We're a county-wide paper in Henderson County, the black-eyed pea capital of the world.
Have you been having a good time?
Fantastic. I've shook hands with Governor Carter and Paul Newman. That was good enough.
It makes for a long day interviewing and being interviewed. Well, it's true that if you're on television every day. But we have the satisfaction of knowing that you're getting the story thanks to the press.
Sometimes we've had the image.
But here is Jimmy Carter speaking to a group of delegates. And why is this delegate, this nice silver-haired lady, scowling this way? Because this nice silver-haired lady who came all the way to New York to see Jimmy Carter and who was invited to this room to see Jimmy Carter hasn't seen Jimmy Carter yet, thanks to the press. Don't feel bad, silver-haired lady. He's down there somewhere, but a lot of us haven't seen him yet either. We have some terrific pictures of one another, though. Walter?
Speaking of the press here, and this is a picture at the door where Jimmy Carter will be arriving here at Madison Square Garden. We'll see him coming in a moment. As we wait, let me just tell you this bit of a story, because I started a long time ago this evening. You know, there's a children's newspaper being published these days, and they've got a lot of their young reporters on the floor of the convention. They've got full press credentials, which they're entitled. They run in age from 10 to 13, I'm told. And they had an absolute scoop, no question about it. They said it was going to be Mondale, and they said it 2 days ago. And they said it because the young reporter who got the story, Gilbert Childs, who's a 12-year-old, obviously convinced him the story was true, and the story was based on the fact that Muskie had told friends that when he went to Plains, Georgia to have his interview with Jimmy Carter spent the whole time talking about Fritz Mondale. And it apparently was supposed to, according to young Gilbert Childs' story, have put Muskie's nose a little bit out of joint, and he told some friends about it. The story got around. Gilbert Childs checked it in some other sources, and he came up with the story for the newspaper saying that Mondale would be the man. That was 2 days ago, so we should have been listening or reading. But I found out who Gilbert Childs is. It turns out that he became involved with Children's Express through a friend who's a 17-year-old associate editor of the publication. Gilbert lives in Queens. I hope our recruitment people are listening. Attends Schlesinger Junior High School. He's, at the age of 13, had previous magazine experience. He used to write for Kids magazine. Jimmy Carter has arrived at the hall. That picture you saw a moment ago was the outside of his trailer. He slipped in there behind the crowd of waiting newspaper people and cameramen who Charlie Perrault was telling us about. He's back there now. You can see the door of the trailer back behind the placards. They're behind the podium. at Madison Square Garden. It's inside the hall. Unlike the Miami Convention Center, where the Trailer City is, the Miami Beach Center, where the Trailer City is outside. There he is.
Good to see you.
Governor Carter. This is by videotape, as you note there. Just a moment ago, we just turned that picture around and play it back for you. One of the miracles of electronics we can accomplish here. Lest you feel that you're missing anything of great importance out on the convention floor, as we said a moment ago, we're vamping to ready. Well, you can hear him just a minute. Well, I'm sorry.
Governor doesn't have any special...
As I was saying, lest you think you're missing anything out on the floor of the convention, they're introducing various members of the convention staff, part of this vamping until 9:30 for the Mondale speech. They may put Mondale on a few minutes early, we're told. The Democratic National Convention coverage by CBS News will resume after this message.
Healthy-looking heartbeat. But not long ago, this man was critically ill, heart disease. He was saved by this, an electronic pacemaker, an example of today's medical technology. And Merrill Lynch sees an extra benefit. New ways to save lives also create growth for America. Here's some of today's new medical equipment. It's meant growth in the electronics industry, pharmaceuticals, computers, dozens of new industries, thousands of jobs, and better medical care. Why this message from Merrill Lynch? We want you to know why we're bullish on America. Think of all the jobs that need doing in medicine, energy, pollution. Sure, they're enormous jobs, but think of the growth when we do them. And America can do them. That's why Merrill Lynch is bullish on America.
This is the new specially priced Mercury Monarch Luxury Edition. Kind of reminds you of the Lincoln Continental, doesn't it? Comes with a vinyl roof, white sidewall radials, spoked wheel covers, flight bench seats in selected colors, AM/FM stereo radio, and all at $181 less than the total retail value. Sure would like to go for a spin in it.
Cross Your Heart bras, one of many popular products from Playtex, known and used by women the world over. Playtex is part of S-Mark, an American family of companies which also provides fertilizers to make more food available, energy to keep the wheels turning, nourishing food products from Swift, and financial services essential to business. S-Mark, providing over $5 billion worth of needed products annually for you and your world.
The Democratic National Convention in a state of suspension for the moment, waiting for the speech of the vice presidential nominee, Senator Walter Mondale, and then the big moment of the convention and the concluding moment of the convention, the acceptance speech by the presidential nominee, Jimmy Carter. Just a moment ago, among those many functionaries of the convention proceedings who they were introducing from the podium, we saw an old friend from Miami Beach who was very much in the news 4 years ago because of the riots there during the Republican convention and the Democratic, particularly the Republican, the very popular police chief of Miami Beach, Rocky Pomerantz. Rocky did such a good job down there, it was felt by those who are interested in law enforcement and keeping order, in placating the demonstrators and keeping the peace, that he has become quite a consultant on that matter. He is a consultant to both the Democrats and the Republicans and has been here in New York helping the New York police keep order, and that hasn't been much of a problem here. They've done an excellent job of it, although the demonstrators haven't given them that much problem. Ed Bradley, who has been following the Carter campaign during the last crescendoing months of it, right up to the victory on June 8th in Ohio, has now moved to the podium where he'll be reporting on Carter's arrival there in a little while. Ed?
Walter, you described the convention as being in a state of suspension. That's about the size of up here on the podium. The tables and all of this electronic equipment has been moved around recently. We've been pushed back against the wall to make room for some more seats here in the front as the various dignitaries are starting to arrive here on the podium. Most of those in this area are Democratic officials from around the country. Mayor Tom Bradley, Governor El Grasso just behind me over here to the left. On the other side, I guess you would call the most honored position. Those are the people I would imagine who will be closest to Jimmy Carter. The people of his inner circle, some of the members of his family. I would imagine just about all 11 members of his family who were out campaigning for him in the last 6 months anyway of his 19-month campaign. His mother, Miss Lillian, is expected to come up with Mrs. Rosalind Carter. We're not sure exactly where they are now. It's interesting to see the shift from one side to the other with so many newcomers coming in on the left-hand side of this podium. Kind of indicative of Jimmy Carter coming from outside the Washington circle, the normal circle for the presidential nominees. There'll be a lot of Georgians on the other side of the podium in the place of honor. Walter?
They've just given National Committee Chairman Bob Strauss a huge replica of the convention badge, and the demonstrations going on now is for him. That's Mrs. Strauss with him. Bob Strauss, who came out of Texas some years ago to work on the finances of the Democratic Party at the request of Lyndon Johnson, and who, after the McGovern loss in November of 1972, displaced Gene Westwood, McGovern's choice as the national chairman, as the head of the Democratic Party, and has that was a vote to approve this gift to Mr. Strauss. He has been one of the architects of the unity and the harmony found here tonight, along with Jimmy Carter. They did not work in tandem in achieving that by any means. It is not believed that Carter was necessarily Strauss's choice for the nomination, but he certainly has gone along with it in the interest of the unity of the party. And now it is understood that Carter is going to ask him to stay on as the chairman. Bob Schieffer is on the floor of the convention with New York's Governor Hugh Carey. Bob?
Walter, you might be surprised to know that Governor Carey is over in the Texas delegation. You know, the Texas delegation gave a big signboard thanks to New York. They were really doing some PR work there for you, Governor.
I was delighted to have the great Texas delegation pay its respects to the great city of New York, and we of the state appreciate that. I'm here to pay honor to Governor Briscoe of Texas and Bob Strauss. Bob Strauss of Texas gave us a chance for this convention. Indeed, many Texans have helped over the years to make New York what it is. I go back to the days of Sam Rayburn. I served in the House with Mr. Sam. He was a great speaker. Another former speaker joined, John Nance Garner, joined with Franklin Roosevelt to get this country back on its feet again in 1932. That's when we put Texas and New York together. And indeed, Senator Lloyd Bentsen of Texas has been a great friend to the people of this entire country, and we in New York appreciate that. So we have much that we owe Texas. And we acknowledge that, and we want Texans to become really dual citizens of the great state of the North, the Empire State, joined with the Lone Star State. And,
Governor Briscoe, who thought up this little demonstration a while ago?
These fine three delegates right back here, these right around here, was spontaneous on the part of the delegates here. And they appreciate it, as we all do. The friendliness, the hospitality of the people of New York.
Thank you very much, Governors. Walter?
Thank you, Bob. This, of course, is as well as Jimmy Carter's night and Hugh Carey's night, now that the Texans have been so nice about New York. It's also, of course, Senator Mondale's night. It might have been Senator Muskie's night. He had a night something like this in 1968 when he was Hubert Humphrey's running mate selected at that convention, but that convention was so bitter, so divisive. There was so much rioting going on in the streets, it hardly had the atmosphere that tonight has. But Morton Dean is with Senator Muskie. Morton?
Thank you.
Walter, along with a lot of people, Senator Muskie is signing autographs here, and people rushing up to him, congratulating. A few of them saying they wish that it was Muskie, not Mondale. But what about yourself, Senator? I know you've been asked this all during the day. It's sort of a bittersweet situation to go through an elimination contest such as the one you've been through.
Well, it was for a moment, but Morton, in the first place, I never expected to be considered, so that was a surprise. Once I got caught up in it, I developed expectations. But once it was over, it was easy to return to what's been my preoccupation for 2 years, running for re-election. And besides, as you all know, I've learned to lose them as well as win them.
Yeah, you're always telling well, they're telling me we'll have to wait for a down Maine story. Okay, Walter.
Senator Edmund Muskie, who has been heading the Congressional Budget Committee, a new effort of the legislative branch of government to try to keep control of the budget in its own hands, as well as letting the executive do that job, and has been given credit for doing a remarkable job there, will return now to that job. As a senator from Maine, he has to stand for a re-election this year in Maine, however. With Ethel Kennedy now, Leslie Stahl. Leslie?
Hi, Walter. I'm standing, as you said, with Ethel Kennedy, Mrs. Robert Kennedy, who's been sitting up here in the balcony looking out over the sea of people. It really is quite crowded. People have been saying it's a dull convention. Does it look that way from up here?
Well, not to me. No, I think there's great excitement. I love seeing all the old faces and the friends. I think it's really fun.
Who have you been picking out?
Well, just people from over the years. And just pals.
Just pals. What do you think about the Mondale choice? You think it's a wise choice, politically speaking?
Oh, yes. I'm really enthusiastic about it. I think the ticket has a lot of vigor. And, I think they're going to win.
Have you been involved in politics? Have you been out doing anything for the party? Or do you plan to?
No, I still have 5 little children at home, so...
Walter, Mrs. Kennedy was telling me that she doesn't like to do these interviews very much, and I promised her I'd only ask her 2 questions. So I'm going to throw it back to you. Walter?
You can talk to her about tennis. I think she'd give me an answer.
Walter says I could talk to you about tennis, and that would relax you.
I'd like to talk to her about his tennis, and that would relax me.
No, she doesn't dare.
She said, you don't dare.
Morton Dean now is with Jody Powell. Come in, Mort.
I'm with former governor's secretary, the candidate's press secretary, Jody Powell. Jody, you've been receiving as much congratulations as a candidate here. Going back some, the game plan worked. No question about that. Okay. Did you ever have to vary from that original game plan that was developed so many months ago?
Well, I think the idea that there was some sort of elaborate and detailed thing laid out 3 years ago that was followed without deviation through 30 primaries there's no truth in it. You can lay out general sort of themes and make some basic assumptions, but back when this thing was first talked about, we had no idea even of what the order of primaries was going to be.
Are you going to have to change? Does the candidate become a different type of candidate?
Well,
what kind of campaign do you run?
A different type of candidate, but clearly you're running a different sort of campaign. You're running against one person rather than 8 or 10 or 12, and you're running in 50 states at once rather than in 1 or 2 or 3 a week. So clearly the campaign changes. I think also that there will be a greater emphasis almost naturally on those things that traditionally divide the Democratic Party from the Republican Party.
Such as?
In the primaries, well, I think basically where you see the future of this country, whether you believe that people with warts and all are best left to their own devices and will over the long haul make the best decisions, or whether you feel that there are some people who by birth or inheritance or whatever, somehow a little bit better equipped to make those decisions for us.
What does that translate into? He's going to run on what? New economic programs, new
federal programs for the poor and the disadvantaged?
I think that, I don't think that was the question you asked me. You asked me to give one example of the traditional differences between the Democratic Party. Certainly the approach to economics is one thing. You know, the approach to foreign policy is another. Most of them, however, stem back to that basic theme of whether you basically trust people or whether you don't. And I think the past two Republican administrations have clearly indicated that they really don't.
Okay, Jody, congratulations. It's a big night for you as well as the candidate. Take care. Walter?
Mort, you know, that's going to be a story that political books are going to be written about. In fact, Teddy White's already working on one, I know, and there's no greater expert on making of presidents than he. But it's an amazing story. Jody Powell there, 32 years old. Hamilton Jordan, campaign manager, 31 years old. Charles Curbo, chief advisor of the attorney in Atlanta, somewhat older than they are. Not one of those persons has ever been involved in national politics before. Their whole political lives, and it has been very brief at that, was in helping Jimmy Carter get elected and serve 2 years as governor of Georgia. Not exactly considered a full rounded preparation for conducting a major national campaign. And yet these people did it. How they did it is going to be the subject of those political textbooks for a good number of years down the way. And this particularly will be true if they go all the way and win the election in November. The Democratic National Convention coverage of CBS News will resume after this message.